I can specify the output language, the units in metric or imperial, and more. Check out the link in the instructor notes for a full list of optional parameters. Let's build this feature into our site in the form of a search within time function.
We're going to expand our user control window to allow the user to specify the number of minutes they want to take to get to a certain place, whether they walk, drive, bike, or take transit. We could do within a certain distance, but in New York City, I know people usually don't drive, and I think time matters more to our users. So we're adding in a bit more HTML here. We're going to give the users the option to choose a maximum duration, so the maximum time they'd like to spend commuting, and an option to choose a travel mode. Then we'll give them a place to input the address that they're interested in, and we'll prompt them for something like their office address, and a Go button. And we'll add in some additional CSS. Then, as usual, we'll just add an event listener on the Go button to call our new function, which we'll call search within time. Now, at the high level, what this search within time function is going to do is use the distance matrix service to calculate the distances and the durations of travel between each of our markers and the location that the user entered. We'll create our distance matrix service, which we'll use, and we'll capture the user entered address and check to make sure it isn't blank. If it isn't, we'll create an origins array from our list of markers and use the user entered address as the destination. And we'll capture the travel mode that was also entered by the user. Finally, we'll call the getDistanceMatrix function, passing in our origins, our single destination, the travel mode, and specifying the unit should be imperial. When we get back the response, we'll check to make sure the status is okay. And if the status is okay, we'll display all of the markers that fit the criteria that the user entered. And we'll do this in a separate function since this is getting huge. If the status wasn't okay, we're going to alert the user with what the status was. This is an example of a more specific error message. Let's move on to the next piece to display the markers that were within the time that the user entered. Okay, so again, we just used the distance matrix service. We passed in all of our markers as the origins and the user's important place as the destination. Now that we got back the response, we have to parse through it to get the useful data. We'll recapture all of the origins and destinations from the response, and also capture that user entered maximum travel duration, which was in minutes. We have a nested loop here to create one element per origin and destination pair. That element is going to have a distance and duration from point A to point B. We want to capture both the distance and the duration in text form because we're going to display that to our users. And we also need the value of the duration, which we're going to compare to our maximum value that was entered by the user. If the duration is within that maximum value, then we'll display that marker on the map. We're also keeping track of this at least one variable. This is important because even if we get an okay response from the getDistanceMatrix function, if we don't find any markers that are within the acceptable commute, we want to let the user know. For each marker that does appear, we'll create a small info window. We'll display the duration and the journey distance in that info window. Finally, we'll put a little event listener onto that marker so that if the user clicks on it, we'll close the little info window and make room for our big one that has the street view panorama. Let's test out this feature. I'd like to stay within a 30-minute walk of my office. I can see that 2 listings fit that criteria. And if I select them, I can see more details. Before we move on, let's review the distance matrix functionality.